All right, what's up, everyone? Andrew Bone here with BamaInsider.com. I know it's been a few weeks since we've been on the YouTube channel here. I just wanted to update you guys a little bit on what's going on with recruiting right now. Obviously, it's been a pretty busy 14, 15 hours for the Crimson Tide. Alabama picking up three big commitments. So we'll talk about those guys. I'll talk about a little bit about some of the guys that I think Alabama could land in over the course of the next couple weeks leading up to the football season, kind of where things stand overall in Alabama's recruiting class. So let's take a look real quick at what has happened over the course of the last 16 hours or so. First off, we got wind yesterday morning, and I guess I probably got wind the night before that Alabama was going to pick up a quarterback commitment. Drake Maye in the 2021 recruiting class. Drake Maye out of North Carolina, one top overall players in the Southeast for the 2021 class. Drake Maye. He actually visited Alabama during the spring, and then ended up coming down to Alabama's camp last month. And shortly after Alabama's camp, I had heard a lot of praise about him. Coming from within the athletic facility down in Tuscaloosa, that Alabama was extremely high on him. That he was one of their top overall players in the 2021 class. That they really wanted to add him. Now it was going to be tough, from the get go, because he's a North Carolina legacy. His father was a quarterback at North Carolina. His older brother, Luke Maye, starting center for the North Carolina basketball team. So if you follow basketball much, as I do, it's funny because I'm a humongous North Carolina basketball fan, have been for my entire life. So I wasn't just some North Carolina fan over the last 10 years. Pretty much from elementary school until now, I've been a North Carolina basketball fan. So I was well aware who Luke Maye was, and started thinking, okay, well, North Carolina's having a pretty good recruiting class this year. Mac Brown's doing well. May end up really helping out with getting his brother Drake Maye on board, but Alabama was able to secure his commitment. And like I said, I had found out about 2 nights ago that Drake Maye was on the verge of committing, and then yesterday morning had gotten some more solid info on that. So I think there was a little bit of a tweet that went out there, maybe by one of the Alabama coaches. A lot of people were kind of suggesting that Alabama was about to pick up a quarterback commitment from Jalen Milroe. I think that was kind of the prediction from most of the people. I was on a radio show yesterday morning, the Gary Harris Show in Tuscaloosa, and I kind of shot that down when he asked me about that and said that the quarterback that I would watch out for is Drake Maye. And then last night around, I think it was around 6 p.m. Central Time, he announced his commitment to Alabama. So a big pickup there for Alabama. What does that mean for Jalen Milroe? Since we've been talking about him as a 2021 quarterback out of Texas, does that mean that Alabama's out of the mix for him? I don't think it does. I think Alabama's still very much involved with him. Now, it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens, because I know that Jalen Milroe wanted to announce before the start of his junior season, and I think Alabama was in the lead heading up until leading until yesterday. Does he decide to wait now? Does Alabama decide to wait? Because, we all know that Alabama is still heavily recruiting Bryce Young, the quarterback commitment to USC in the 2020 class. I know they don't want to mess anything up. And even though he's still he's a 2020 guy and these guys are 2021, you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, that you're taking the right guys, and timing is always everything. So Alabama may decide to wait to take another quarterback until Bryce Young makes his decision, but at the same time, Jalen Milroe may take a step back from recruiting. I still think he's going to be a top target for Alabama. We'll just have to wait and see kind of what happens moving forward. Does he still set a commitment date for some time before his junior season? And I think it was going to happen soon. I think it was going to happen, probably within the month. Maybe sooner than that. But now with Drake Maye on board, he may decide to take a step back. So we'll monitor that pretty closely. We'll update everyone on BamaInsider.com, about what's going on there. And then shortly after his commitment, it was funny because My wife and I had just sat down for dinner when Drake May's commitment had broken, and then luckily we were able to get that story up online, and we were walking into a movie last night. We went to see the Trey Anastasio documentary, Between Me and My Mind, which is awesome. If if any of you are fish fans out there, it was outstanding. So we really enjoyed that. As we're walking in, I got a phone call from one of our rivals affiliates, and they told me that Timothy Smith was committed to Alabama, and of course we started trying to track down that information right away, and we were able to track that down, confirm it, and put that out there. And Kyle Henderson and I did a little video. Just talked on the phone a little bit about the two commitments last night with Drake May and Timothy Smith. Timothy Smith, big time commitment for Alabama. This is a kid that they highly coveted. He's a 6'4", 315-pound defensive lineman, Rivals 100 type kid. I mean, they have really wanted this kid for a very long time. Visited Alabama last month, and we kind of started to hear, maybe I would say about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that Alabama was in very good position, that it was looking like that he was going to head out of state, that the two schools that were probably in the lead for him was Alabama and Georgia. Even though Florida State and Florida were very heavily involved, it was really looking like he was heading out of state, and had gotten a really good feeling that he was going to go to Alabama. So getting him on board was huge for Alabama. Sal Sinceri did a tremendous job. Brian Baker, the defensive line coach, those two guys kind of headed up that recruitment, and did an outstanding job recruiting him. So getting those two guys on board last night, and then this morning, Christian Story, which we knew about. We knew Christian Story was leaning towards Alabama. He told me a few days ago that that's where he was going to go, and he kind of had that feeling after he visited Alabama for the cookout last month that it was going to be Alabama, and Alabama was pushing for him. Now, a lot of people are asking me now, what position is he going to play? Is he going to play safety? Is he going to play quarterback? Is he going to play wide receiver? Well, I don't think Alabama is really looking at him more as a receiver. I think they did recruit him as an athlete. Possibly a safety. Could play quarterback. I think a lot will depend on what happens with Bryce Young. Will Bryce Young eventually flip to Alabama, or will he stick with USC? I think his decision will maybe play a big role in what happens with Christian Story down the road, in terms of if he ends up starting out at quarterback, or if he ends up playing safety. So we'll keep an eye on that pretty closely. But an outstanding athlete. I mean, he's 6'2", about 205 pounds. Had an outstanding junior season. 35 touchdown passes at quarterback. I think only 6 interceptions, and then I think he had 6 interceptions on the defense side of the ball, along with about 55 tackles. So you can tell he's an outstanding athlete. Alabama is really excited about getting him on board. And another big thing about his commitment, and I noted this on Twitter earlier today, is Alabama is doing a tremendous job recruiting in-state wise. We saw last year Alabama missed on some of the top overall guys in the state. They'd had a really good in-state class, but you look at George Pickens and Clay Webb going out of state this year. Already 6 out of the top 7 players in the state of Alabama are committed to Alabama, including a clean sweep of the top 3 guys in state. So tremendous recruiting class so far for Alabama. And a lot of people have been asking, I guess, for the last 3 or 4 months, and it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that Clemson was going to just run away with the #1 recruiting class in the country. Now, still a long way to go. Clemson's still recruiting some outstanding players that they're heavily involved in. Alabama's still recruiting some great players. Programs like Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M. There's a lot of schools that are out there that have a chance to really close strong and have great recruiting classes. Ohio State's another one. So it's still a long way to go. But Alabama, as of today, has moved up to the #1 recruiting class in the country, according to Rivals.com. And about a month and a half ago, nobody thought that was really possible, that Alabama was gonna close the gap and become the #1 overall team in the Rivals recruiting rankings. But like I said, still a long way to go. You never know what may happen. Of course, the rankings are going to change at least three more times between now and signing day. So, players can move up, players can move down, and really shake up the rankings overall. So I wouldn't celebrate just yet, but knowing that Alabama's definitely in the mix for the number one overall recruiting class should excite a lot of Alabama fans, especially with the guys that they still have. They're still recruiting. Guys like Zachary Evans, Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert, Jordan Birch. A lot of big time 5-star type kids that they're very much involved with, that they can end up landing down the road. I think Alabama fans need to continue to watch and wait and see what happens. Now, what's going to happen moving forward? You look at Alabama's commitment board and you see 22 commitments, and I think there's some of those guys that will probably end up elsewhere. And I think there's probably one or two that may not necessarily be really committed right now. They're just maybe waiting on the right opportunity to announce a decommitment or a flip or something somewhere else. And I don't think Alabama's too worried about that. Plenty of guys out there that they're heavily recruiting that they heavily want. Some of those kids are just going to do it on their own time. Who's next to commit? If you would have asked me 2 days ago, I probably wouldn't have predicted Timothy Smith to jump on board. I did write a story about, maybe it was about 2 weeks ago, and I said that he was a possibility in terms of committing this month. Wasn't one I was 100% about, just because he just didn't talk that much, didn't really share too much information, so we weren't sure exactly when he was going to commit. So you never know who may jump on board over the course of the next couple weeks, and we're still in a recruiting dead period. So the recruiting dead period ends next week. I think is next Wednesday or Thursday, and then Alabama's going to have prospects visit next weekend for the cookout, so we could easily see some more kids jump on board between now and then. One kid I'm really watching closely, I think all Alabama fans should watch him pretty closely, is Xavier Alford, the 4-star safety out of Texas. And we've been talking about him for it seems like the last month now, about closing in on making a decision. And I think he's very close. Every time I've talked to him, he said it's going to happen pretty soon. I really like Alabama's chances with him. I think he remains a top tier target for the Crimson Tide. So watch out for Xavier Alford, one of the top overall safeties in the country, making a commitment here. I think he'll announce within the next week. Could it be longer than that? Maybe, but I'd be surprised if it lasted that much longer. Another kid I'm watching pretty closely is Cam Large. He's a 3-star tight end out of Massachusetts. He is going to be committing sometime, I think, in the next week. It looks like it's between Alabama and Wisconsin. He took an official visit to Alabama last month, and we all know that Alabama's big need at tight end position this year. Now, they already have one tight end commitment in Caden Clark, and they're still going after some big names, as I mentioned earlier, Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert. Those guys always have a spot. They're elite players, that have a spot no matter if Alabama gets full at a certain position. They're at the tight end position. They're always going to have a spot. So, but at the same time, you got to fit your needs. You got to fill your needs. And I think that Cam Large is a kid that Alabama likes a lot. He could play, he easily play that H-back role in Tuscaloosa. So I don't know what he's going to do just yet. I'm not ready to make a prediction. I think he likes Alabama, but we've heard he likes Wisconsin a lot as well. So those are looks like those are his top 2 schools. Is there going to be a 5-star commitment for Alabama? A lot of people are waiting on that big 5-star commitment. Alabama keeps getting these Rivals 100 type kids. We saw a lot of kids commit last month. When is Alabama going to potentially get a top 15, top 10 player in the country to commit to them? I think Zachary Evans is leaning towards Alabama. 5-star running back, number 1 running back in the country. I think he's leaning towards Alabama. Now, will he make a commitment before the start of his senior season? Possibly. I think that's something to watch very closely. He's kind of taken, recruiting in terms of talking about it pretty slow. He hasn't really gone out there and talked to many people about his recruitment in the last month or two. But we know that Alabama is very high on his list. He visited Tuscaloosa last month. One of his closest friends, who he claims he wants to play with in college, Damian George committed to Alabama last month. So would not be surprised if we saw Zachary Evans jump on board for Alabama before his senior season. So keep an eye on that. Another five-star running back that's going to be committing at the end of the month is Kendall Milton, and we've talked about him a good bit. Five-star running back out of California. I still think Kendall Milton is leaning towards Georgia, so that would be still my prediction as of today. And I think he's announcing on what is it, July the 29th. Another kid that's going to be committing this month is Jacqueline Roy, the Rivals 100 defensive lineman out of Baton Rouge University Lab School. He's going to be committing. It's between Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M. I think he's going to pick LSU. I don't think he's going to make it back to Tuscaloosa before that announcement. He was planning on making it back for the cookout, but I don't think he's going to be making it to the cookout this month. So I think he's going to be picking LSU. Now, will Alabama stop recruiting him? No, they're going to continue to press for him, even if he does commit to LSU. So I don't think his recruitment will be over by a long shot, and I think he'll still take some visits this fall. So we'll watch his commitment on July the 26th, see what he ends up doing. I mentioned this guy on our message board. I've been mentioning this guy on our message board for the last several months, and now we're starting to see kind of some cryptic tweets, decisions. Jamil Burroughs, he's a four-star defensive lineman who is committed to Georgia, been committed to Georgia for a very long time. But been hearing for probably the last month or two that he was going to reopen his recruitment. Now, he made it to Tuscaloosa for the cookout last month. I think with Alabama's numbers right now, if he's going to want to jump on board, he's probably going to have to make a decision here pretty soon. So we're keeping an eye on Jamil Burroughs, four-star defensive lineman out of Georgia, currently committed to Georgia, who may flip to Alabama. So we're keeping an eye on him as well. I'm going to go through some of these questions real quick because that's kind of, the gist of what I wanted to talk about today. So I'll go over some questions real quick, and we'll get out of here. So let's see here. What's the difference between the Army and the Under Armour All-Star Games? Ernesto, listen, every top kid in the country can't play in an All-Star game. In one All-Star game. There's going to have to be, there has to be multiple games. You can't invite 200 kids to play in one game. So it's basically like, it's schools recruiting up against each other. It's like Alabama and Georgia going up head to head, trying to get the best players in the country to commit to play for them. That's basically what it is. You're either playing down in Orlando or you're playing in San Antonio. That's basically how I see it. And both games get tons of great players, every single year. So I don't see, much of a difference between the two. Does Timothy Smith's commitment affect Jacobian Gilroy or Jacqueline Roy from Fletcher? No, not really. Alabama's still recruiting several defensive linemen. They need more defensive linemen in this class. Getting Timothy Smith on board is huge for Alabama because it gives them a big body guy that they really highly coveted in this class. They would certainly take Jacqueline Roy or Jacobian Gilroy in this class. I don't think it affects, in terms of Alabama's perspective, I don't think it affects them at all. You look at LSU. LSU has, 5 or 6 defensive line commitments so far, and they're still heavily recruiting both of those guys. So it doesn't affect, Alabama's recruitment of those guys at all. Brittany, does Javier Morton decommit soon? Probably so. I've been kind of expecting that for a while now. I think he's just trying to, I actually asked him the other day and did not get a response from him. But I do think Javier Morton does reopen his recruitment or flip soon. He's just going to do it on his own time. You may hear a lot of Georgia Tech buzz, but I don't think Alabama is going to continue to recruit him once he does flip or reopen his recruitment. All right, let's see here. Somebody asked about Zach Evans. We talked about him. What's the latest on tight end Darnell Washington? Alabama's still very much involved there. I think Alabama's probably, he hasn't named a top 2 or 3, but I think Alabama's probably in that top 2 or 3. I know some people have tried to say, oh, Alabama's in the driver's seat for him. I don't know if he has an overall leader just yet. I think that's probably pure speculation, but I do think Alabama's a very strong contender. I think he's going to take his official visits in the fall and then make a decision. Obviously, he's one of Alabama's top overall recruits. Alabama getting some more big guys on board, some more elite players on board, I think is going to help out. And he may even be waiting to see kind of what happens with the quarterback situation in this class. So, Alabama ends up getting Bryce Young on board down the road. Maybe that helps. We'll see. But I definitely think that Alabama is very much involved with him and will be until the very end. Glenn Harris asked about if Alabama's finished at defensive tackle. No, they're not. And I talked about Jacobian Gilroy and Jacqueline Roy earlier, but I will kind of make a prediction right now on both of those guys. I think both of them are going to end up at LSU. I think Roy's going to commit to LSU on July the 26th. Gilroy is going to wait and says he's going to wait until I think it's the Under Armour All-America game or the Army game. I can't remember which one he's playing in, but I think he wants to wait until then. I lean LSU right now, but like I said, still a long way to go. McKinley Jackson, the 4-star defensive lineman. I think a lot's going to depend on what happens the rest of the way. Does Alabama get another defensive lineman on board between now and when he gets ready to decide? I think Alabama's in the lead right now, but if they end up getting another defensive lineman, I can see him going elsewhere. Let's see. I know you don't know, but if you had to guess, who do you think will finish number 1 in the class rankings? Well, like I said earlier, Alabama currently sitting at number 1 in the Rivals.com rankings. Depends on what happens with how players rank when over the course of the next 6 months, 8 months. I think Alabama's got a chance to to really finish strong. There's some top guys that are out there that they're heavily involved in, and I think they've got a really good chance to finish number 1. Regardless, your top 3 recruiting class, you should be competing for national championships. Your top 5 recruiting class, you should be competing for national championships. Should not matter if you're 1 or 5. If you're 1 through 5, that's great. You get them on campus, you develop them, you coach them, and you go out there and try to compete. And it shouldn't matter. You look at Clemson. How many times has Clemson been number 1 in the Rivals recruiting rankings? I think it's 0. And they've been dominating on the field and winning championships and sending players to the NFL. Alabama can do the same. Georgia can do the same. So it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. I know it's number 1 recruiting class more for fans than anything else. Programs like to talk about it on signing day. Oh, we finished with the number 1 recruiting class in the country. But end of the day, you finish with the top 5 recruiting class, you should be competing for national championships. Let's see here. What are my thoughts on Zach Evans? I mentioned him earlier, but I do think that I like Alabama's chances right now. I think he does. I think there's I don't want to say I think he does. I think there's a good chance that he commits early, probably before the season. I'd like Alabama's chances right now, but I think it's going to last all the way up until signing day. Schools aren't going to go away. He's going to probably continue to take visits. And he's going to get a lot of pressure, especially from the in-state school. So I wouldn't, if he commits to Alabama, that's great, but I wouldn't celebrate just yet because long way until signing day. EJ Williams, where do you see him going, Bama or Clemson? I don't see him going to Bama because I think Alabama's pushing for some other guys a lot harder than they are for him right now. I think Alabama's kind of waiting to see what happens with Xavier Henderson, Brian Robinson, Arian Smith, Keyshawn Boot. Those are 4 guys that they're heavily recruiting at the wide receiver position. I just don't see them really pushing for EJ Williams right now, even though he's come out and said that Alabama, Clemson are kind of his top 2 schools, and different reporters are saying, oh, Alabama's in great shape with EJ Williams. I just don't see them pushing for him, and so I don't see him going to Alabama. Let's see. Is Cam Latua locked for the tight end spot right now that James is in the portal? I don't know. Possibly. You'd have to probably ask Kyle or Tony those questions. Brittany's asking about Keyshawn Boot if he's going to flip. Um, I don't know yet. I think he definitely is interested in Alabama. It's always tough to flip a kid from the state of Louisiana who's committed to LSU, but Alabama has done that in the past. We've seen that plenty of times. Dylan Moses was once committed to LSU, signed with Alabama. Kenny Bell flipped from LSU to Alabama on signing day. Luther Davis, taking you back to 2007, flip from LSU to Alabama. So it does happen. These are kids who are from the state of Louisiana who were committed to LSU, flipped to Alabama. So that stuff does happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. He's expected to be back in Tuscaloosa for the cookout next weekend. But yeah, still a long way to go. I'm sure he wants to wait and see how the offense down in Baton Rouge looks this season before he makes a final decision. But we'll have to just wait and see how it happens. All right. Hoping for EJ Williams badly. Well, yeah, he's not coming. Let's see. What are Alabama's chances with Bryce Young? Just have to wait and see. I think Bryce Young likes Alabama a lot. I think he's got a great relationship with Steve Sarkisian. I think Alabama's playing it pretty well with him in terms of not pressing for him, in terms of pressing for him to flip. I think they're letting him just kind of take it day by day. I think Bryce Young and his family want to wait and see how things go this season out at USC, which, as many people know, Clay Helton is going to be on the hot seat right away. Going into the season, and you never know, could be fired by midseason. I mean, they got a tough schedule to open up the season, and could easily get fired midseason. You just never know what may happen. I will say this: if Bryce Young sets an official visit to Alabama, I think that should signify that he is going to Alabama. I don't think he's going to set anything until he's for certain that he's going to flip, or certain that he's going to decommit from USC, because I don't think he wants to disrespect USC. And we see so many kids that are committed elsewhere that set official visits. Well, I don't think he's one of those type kids. I think he's been committed to USC for a while. If he knows he wants to flip, he's going to take an official visit elsewhere. So just wait for that. For now, I think he's playing it pretty well, and that's all we can say right now. All right, who do I think will flip? Well, Bryce Young is one that we're going to continue to talk about and continue to say that Alabama is very much involved with him. As I mentioned earlier, Keyshawn Boot is very interested in Alabama. Jamil Burroughs, certainly a kid that I think ends up flipping. I think Alabama's probably in the driver's seat for him. So that's certainly a kid that I'd keep a close eye on over the course of the next few months. We'll see who ends up visiting. A lot's going to happen during the season. A lot of kids are watching the programs they're committed to see how they do on the field, and then you may start seeing visits happen in November, in December, maybe even some in January. Some kids that are committed elsewhere that maybe their position coach goes somewhere else. Maybe a coordinator gets let go, or maybe even a head coach gets fired. I think so. That happens, and that's something that Alabama has to kind of they have to pay attention to. They have to wait on, and they have to see what happens with with the season with some of these other kids. And you never know what may happen with some of the kids that are committed to Alabama currently. Are they going to continue to take visits? Are they potentially going to flip? Will Alabama target someone that they're not targeting right now down the road? There's always a chance of that happening. There's always a chance of somebody emerging as an elite player. We've seen so many kids that didn't emerge until after their senior season that Alabama didn't know about, that Alabama didn't recruit. Guys like Josh Jacobs, guys like Eddie Jackson. Thankfully, Alabama continued to recruit those guys, and it worked out well. So we just have to wait and watch and see how that goes. All right. Who do I consider the best recruiter on the staff besides Coach Saban? Man, that's a tough question. I mean, there's some guys that are doing a tremendous job right now, and it's hard to pick just one. I mean, you have to look at the guys this year. I mean, I think you have to look at Sal Sinceri as just tearing it up on the recruiting trail this year. When I was told that it was going to be, there's multiple guys in this recruiting class right now, and when I was told by multiple coaches that it was going to be tough for their players to say no to Sal. That says a lot about his recruiting ability. I mean, Alabama has a staff full of excellent recruiters, but Sal Sinceri is certainly doing a tremendous job in this year's recruiting cycle. So, could easily see him being potentially the Rivals.com recruiter of the year. So watch out for him. All right. How many recruits do I think watched how Alabama operated during media day? I don't know if they were actually watching to see how Alabama operated, but we're in the age of social media where every recruit is on social media. They're seeing everything that's posted. They're watching every video. They're paying attention. So, they certainly read and watch the interviews and stuff like that on social media. I'm sure plenty of fans are tweeting stuff at them, things that are said, things that are not said. So, I'm sure pretty much all the recruits who were on social media, which is pretty much all of them, have seen things about Alabama this week. All right, guys, a little over 30 minutes. That's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Just a reminder, come on BamaInsider.com, which is part of the Rivals.com network. You get all this stuff every single day. You get questions from me. You can ask me questions every single minute on BamaInsider.com. I'm on there all the time. If you're interested in doing a sponsorship, if you own a company, you want your company spread across this screen when we're doing this, when we're doing these video interviews on YouTube, hit me up. Let me know. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. You can sponsor any of our stuff on BamaInsider.com. My recruiting Q&A sessions, recruiting nuggets, stuff like that. If you're interested in a sponsorship, shoot me an email, shoot me a message on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone. Come over to BamaInsider.com, ask me. More than happy to discuss that with you. So that's all for today, guys. Thank you so much. We will see you next time.